Why is police work so stressful? Part 1 of many. Coming from the realm of police health psychology, there's a depressing but growing body of science that demonstrates that police work leaves people sadder, fatter, sicker, and deader than jobs in other industries do. In fact, jobs in just about any other industry. And while it may not surprise you that police work is inherently stressful, you probably don't know that a major source of that stress comes from the sheer effort it takes not to appear stressed out all of the time. Let's talk about that. I want you to think back to when you were a little kid. When something went wrong, really terribly wrong, who did your parents or the other adults in your lives tell you to call? 911, right? Because as a society, that's who we call when things go wrong. 911. Well, the police don't call 911. They are 911. And a major function of their jobs is that when we call for help, they have to be ready to show up and assist us, regardless of what the scenario is. The technical term for these calls are calls for service. And the funny thing is, no two calls for service are ever alike. For example, in the couple years that I've been privileged enough to work with my local police department, here's what I've experienced come out on the radio. Tornadoes, hurricanes, car accidents with injuries, car accidents with no injuries except for somebody's claiming back pain, car accidents in which there wasn't actually an accident, drunk drivers who hit people, drunk people who hit drivers, a rent-a-goat company whose electric fence failed and our patrol officers had to show up and rescue 37 goats, missing people who weren't actually missing. Did I mention the goats? Dead children. Children who were around when their parents died. Missing children who were actually just under the bed the whole time. People who need CPR. People who needed CPR like an hour ago. Stolen horses. Noise complaints coming from lawnmowers. Really? Thanks, Deborah. Deer who got stuck on fences because they jumped over the fence and didn't quite make it all the way. You see my point. Whenever we don't know what to do, we call 911 and the police show up, which means that every call for service is different, as well as independent from the call for service before it, and before it, and before it. And although each of these calls for service are wildly different from each other, ultimately, the police have the same role in each one. Show up and reestablish control in a situation where and when control has been lost. Here's another tricky thing about police work. When have you ever seen a panicked or scared or emotional person reestablish any sort of control? You probably haven't. Oh, and a quick side note. Did you know that the number one reason people get into a career in law enforcement is because they wanted to make a positive change in the people around them? It makes sense, doesn't it? Why else would you otherwise voluntarily jeopardize your safety on a daily basis for a group of perfect strangers whom you've never met and you'll probably never know? Why else would you potentially risk your family's well-being to serve a group of people who don't even know your name? Because you have a heart of gold. Because you have a calling and passion for service. Because you care and you're compassionate and you are kind. That's why. And yet, despite that caring, compassionate, huge heart of yours, when you show up on a call for service, it is your job to reestablish control, regardless of what you're feeling. When you show up to a child that needed CPR 30 minutes ago, it is your job to calm the parents down, not to panic. And as such, police are trained to develop a game face. It is their job to show up and reestablish control, not to show their emotions, even though those emotions are definitely there under the surface. And people wonder why police work is stressful. Here at the Galea Foundation, it is our mission to transform the field of law enforcement by revolutionizing its health and training systems, to and including the way that we teach officers how to manage their stress. If you'd like to help make a better world for our first responders, share this video, or click the link below and make a financial contribution if you are so able. There is no such thing as too small of a donation, and every little bit counts. Thank you so much for listening.